how is your experience as an international student in the United States?
My experience as a student in the United States really has been a very exceptional one for me, because not only have I learned a lot about the American culture, although I thought I knew a lot, but I realized that in the last 2 years that I've been here, I learned a lot more. But also I have learned a lot about my culture at home by being away, zooming out and seeing my culture in a different perspective and a different light. So a lot of things that Germany is doing and people in Germany are doing make a lot of sense to me now, but there are a lot of other things that just don't make sense, and I wonder why we haven't made any attempts to change them.
What makes studying or staying in the United States a good experience?
Well, I don't know if I can speak for studying as a whole. I only have this little reference point, Louisiana Tech. But what I know from the United States and what I really like about staying here as a student, and what you don't get in other parts, or let's say in Germany, is that sense of community on campus. The sense of having, the notion of student groups, having students come together for several activities, having the campus as a center focus of society and the center focus of student life. And that was really a new and a great experience for me, and I really enjoyed that part. Overseas, university is more like school. You drop in the morning, you have your classes, you leave, but in the end, everybody meets somewhere around town, and it is really more that kind of school feel and not this closed campus community that you have over here. That really makes it for a very good experience, and a very different experience too.
What makes studying or staying in the United States a bad experience?
I don't know if my answer is going to be specific to the situation in the United States. But of course, if you go somewhere as an international student, there is a lot of administrative paperwork and a lot of bureaucracy that you have to follow, and a lot of stuff that you have to complete in those terms. And this can be quite a hassle. I think, and again, this is not specific to the United States, but I think there are a lot of ways where you can handle those issues more effectively. And sometimes this can get quite overwhelming, even in the process leading to your study, before you even arrive over here, and during your studies as well.
What difficulties or challenges did you face when you first came to the United States? Feel free to share any funny or tragic experiences.
I have two experiences, and one is related to my studies over here, or when I came over here to study, and the other one was my first encounter with the United States, and how that shaped my perception and my expectation of the United States. So let's start off with the first encounter with the United States, which was my parents and me having a road trip in South Florida in 2000. That was a wonderful vacation, but it shaped my experiences about the United States, and what I learned the hard way is that the United States as a country overall are not like South Florida. South Florida is really a universe of its own. And I remember getting out of the plane in Shreveport. We had my college had a 2-week exchange program with a college in Shreveport, and this is how I came into this region. And I was quite surprised to see how different everything looks and how different everything felt. And it took me about 3 or 4 days before I started to get any orientation about this place in general. Any orientation about where am I, what am I doing, how does it look. I remember this place, and this is the sort of culture shock that I can remember, the instant culture shock. The second experience, or the other experience that I have, is getting my driver's license translated. Talking about difficulties of bureaucracy. I think it took me, as you know, and as probably a lot of Americans, you know that the DMV and the OMV, they are not the most favorite places for any citizen to go. And in order to get my driver's license, my German driver's license translated to a UNESCO yes or Louisiana license, I had to go there 5 or 6 times and wait just because the paperwork wasn't right, or they didn't tell me anything about my documentation, or they wanted to start testing and doing the road science test with me. And in the end, what I found out is it took me 10-15 minutes to get my driver's license, because there is an agreement with my home country and the state of Louisiana that basically does not require me to do any kind of tests, what I didn't know. The end to this driver's license story was me printing out the rules and regulations of the DMV and pulling them out to the people at the DMV, because otherwise they would have not believed me that such an agreement exists.
Okay. What do you miss about your home country? What makes you homesick?
I don't know if it makes me homesick, but what I definitely do miss or missed is food. Of course, if as a foreigner, if you're from a different culture, you are accustomed to certain sorts of food. In my case, for example, it's bread. Germans eat a lot of potatoes and a little bit of bread too. And the sort of bread that I'm used to have is something that you just can't get over here. So for what you get at the grocery store, for us, it's mostly like, we just call that toast. It's basically what it is. You get the old breads, the different sorts that we have. What I did to do, or what I did to overcome these issues really is I started to do the most on my own. So I tried to replicate things that I know from home, trying to make my own food, but also mix American food into this mixture. Now at home I have a mixture of Italian food, I have German food in there, and I have a lot of American food too, because quite frankly I like barbecue. So this is something I really, but food in general is something that I missed until I figured out how to do it. The other thing that I really miss, and this is of course something that happens with everybody who goes and who travels and gets to a new place, is in your home place, or at your home place, you have friends, and you have long-term friends that know you forever, friends that I know since first grade, and they can look at my face and they know exactly how I feel, and I can tell them everything that is on my mind. And of course, these types of relationships that have grown over decades, that is something that you really miss. But luckily, in the age of internet, you can still keep contact.
How different is your home country from the United States, and what is so different about it?
I would say my home country is, in comparison to other countries, like I would say Hispanic countries, Asian countries, I'd say my country is really mildly different from the United States, because if we look at a cultural perspective, let's say music or movies, we consume a lot of the same products. So it is different, and whoever went to Europe will agree with me that it is very noticeable, but it's not as dramatic as it is probably for other international students. What is so different, or what is really different? Of course, food is different. The environment is different. Everything looks different. Germany, of course, and the cities are very old in Germany, so everything is pretty cramped up in terms of houses and housing space. But that also makes for shorter ways. In my hometown, the next grocery store is 50 yards away. So if I want to get some groceries, I just walk out of my house, down the street, over the street, and I'm at the next grocery store. That is something that just simply does not work over here, just because everything is spread out. Lifestyle is a little bit different too, especially over here in the south. Everything is a little bit slower, and it's more calmed down. Whereas I am from a big city in Germany, and really accustomed to more speed in every sense. That city is the second biggest city in Germany. It always never sleeps. There's always traffic, there are always people around all the time. You have the subways filled up, and I really enjoy over here that it is a little bit calmer. But on the other hand, of course, I'm missing the big city in a certain kind of way. Yes.
Could you elaborate more on the culture of Germany and how it is different from the United States?
And personality.
Yes. People in general.
People there are a lot of people, a lot of differences in people, subtle differences, not that obvious but subtle. It starts with clothing. For example, try to go to a German classroom at college with your sweatpants on, and your professor will probably look at, in best case, will look at you and kind of be like, what's going on? In the worst case, he'll throw you out of the venue and say, dress properly, and then come back. Other things are, from a personality perspective, Germans are not very outgoing. For example, we got the feedback with a lot of American students at college in Germany that Germans always look very earnest and they don't smile a whole lot. And this is actually something that I found to be true. If you look around in the subway, for example, people are just phased into their phones, listening to music, reading newspapers, but you don't see a lot of smiling faces, which does not necessarily mean that people aren't happy. It is just, they just don't feel the need to express their happiness. Germans are, for example, not very good at small talk, which means if you want to strike a conversation with a German, it's going to be, at first, if they're not used to this behavior, pretty hard. Because they're just not supposed to do it. They're just not used to do this. Small talks about anything. I mean, in Germany, it's usually, well, this is how, how's the weather? This is considered small talk, and that's it. But usually, they're not very talkative, I would say.
Yeah, you spoke about the differences. Now, what have you done so far to adjust with the changes?
I've done quite a lot of things, I guess. I think the first thing is to embrace the new environment and really don't think about what you gain and the new experiences, everything that you learn, instead of thinking what you don't have. I don't think about things that I can get over here or things that I miss from home. They're just not on my mind. I'm trying to embrace the opportunities and I'm trying to embrace the new possibilities. For example, let's say food. There's a lot of food that, for some reason that I can, or food items I would say that I can get over here. But on the other hand, for example, I started getting into barbecue, for example, and I tried to perfect really and work on my barbecue skills. And there are certain things that I can do over here that I could never pull off in Germany. So really embracing the new culture, really looking at the positives and really getting along with it and not thinking about what you don't have, but think about what you gain through this experience. It's just really something I think that helps me battling homesickness, if you will, that I really never really had. On another level, on a personal level, on a behavioral level, I think what really helped too is trying to adjust to the human interactions, really, which means, I said Germans are not very good at small talk. Now, this is something that I am still learning, really, and will still really try to embrace. But it is the entire expectation of what do you expect from another person when they talk to you or when they approach you that you have to adjust. So I like small talk now. It's not that I'm doing it all the time. Sometimes as the little German still comes out of me and tells me, you don't want to talk right now. But for most of the time, I like it, and I like having these quick conversations. When you're on your way to your office, or on your way to your university, or in the grocery store. And these are the small little things that I try to embrace now, and that I try to understand. And I understand that they're part of a culture. They're just not something that just people do for no reason, but it's just the way of living with each other. And this is, for example, something while I was back home in Germany for a week or two. This is something that I really started to miss, is talking to some friendly faces and just talking about basically nothing really important. But at the end, you get out of those conversations, those small little conversations, and you feel better. And this is something that I started to miss in the culture that I'm used to.
What other things do you desire that would make your transition smoother in the United States?
I would like to answer this question in a little bit of a different way, because I don't know if I can add anything to the question of what would I desire. I think my transition has been fairly smooth, and usually research says you go through a series of culture shocks, and my culture shocks really were so low that I almost haven't felt them at all. I think my transition has been smooth through a couple of reasons, and that's what I want to get to. What really helped me making this transition as good as it was for me. And I think the first fact that helped me in transitioning is the fact that I already knew a little bit about the differences between the United States and Germany. At college in Germany, we had a very intensive exchange program with a school in a college in Shreveport and another college in South Texas. So we had students coming over every year. It's a bunch of 10, 15 students, and we were talking about those differences. And that helped me to understand really what I would get myself into coming over here. The other part is, through these exchange programs, I formed relationships. So Shreveport is not very far away from here. So I already had formed relationships with people living in this area. And therefore I had somewhat of a support system that I could draw on. Which means when I came here and I had questions, and I needed to open a bank account, and I needed to go to the DMV, and I needed to do this and do that, and go buy groceries, and pay any kind of bill that came up. I had people that I could ask, and I had people that I could talk about my experience. And I think this is what makes my situation somewhat unique and somewhat different from others. But it really helps me to transition, because I never had the feeling of I am alone in a country that I just really don't know. And so maybe if we can take something away from what happened to me and what helped me to get this transition process, we're really happy to make this transition go well. I would say that maybe it would be a good idea for internationals, if the university could offer some sort of mentoring program, for example. Even through dorm rooms, the housing office, or through the dorm rooms, through assigning, or you have some groups that you try to develop, or some sort of mentoring program where other students can help international students, for example, with the questions that they have. So they can get their support system that is very close, very similar to what